Welcome to the Black Doctor Collective podcast. We as Black doctors are in a unique position. We can change our communities, healthcare, and the world. Of course, we start by changing the way we see and value ourselves. I'm your host, Dr. Shanika Horn, pediatrician and physician coach, travel extraordinaire. I am so happy to have you here and listening. So let's get into it. Welcome back to the Black Doctor Collective podcast. This week we had, for me, a long-awaited opportunity to talk with Dr. Toomer, who I'm sure many of you know and does some wonderful work. So Dr. Toomer, I'm going to let you do your introduction and tell the people who you are and all the marvelous things you do.
Well, I am Dr. Toomer, and I am a family medicine and community health physician. I graduated from Michigan State University in 1996 and from the University of Florida Family Medicine Residency Program in Gainesville in 1999. And my early career had been in underserved areas. I'm a National Health Service Corps scholar, so I spent most of my time there. I now have a virtual program. I am the founder of Total Weight Care Institute, and that is a place where I give complete and compassionate care to patients. And then now I teach physicians how to grow profitable practices by giving complete and compassionate weight care to their patients. And so that's what I do now.
I already love everything you said because I was just talking this week about how a lot of recruiters or HR people will tell you physicians are supposed to be mission over money minded. So I love that you used, I know, big eye roll. I love that you used the term profitable and compassionate in the same sentence because we're taught over time that's mutually exclusive. And
It's not. And also, those are the same people who are making money off of our intellectual property. When you look
amen.
at what insurance company CEOs are making, what hospital CEOs are making, and what we're making, without us, they couldn't prop up those programs. They couldn't prop up their systems. And yet we're the ones who are being told, don't expect to be paid.
Exactly. So yes, that's definitely the sentiment we like to carry forth on this podcast to try to dispel the myths of the culture.
Mm-hmm.
So you're an experienced physician, you're running a profitable business, and you're also showing other doctors how to run similarly structured businesses. Did you always do private practice? What made you move into your own practice? What was I always call it a pivotal moment, I find. There's always a pivotal moment in everyone's story.
Yes, there is. Well, my story actually started about 23 years ago.
Mhm.
So over time, through the stress of residency and med school, marriage, having 3 babies in 2 years, I had gained a significant amount of weight. And so when that weight gain met my genetics, I was a full-blown insulin-dependent diabetic.
Wow.
And then a month after my last daughter was born, I went into congestive heart failure. And for those who are physicians out there, my ejection fraction was 15%.
Ooh.
And I was told that I probably wasn't going to survive without a heart transplant. And if I did, it was probably about a 50% chance of living 1 year without a transplant.
That
And
is
I knew I needed to do something. Yeah, I
that's
was scared.
shocking numbers, especially for a mom and
Yeah.
early in your career. And ooh, that's a lot.
And misdiagnosed 2 weeks before. I knew something was wrong. I told the pulmonologist that I saw that I was having extreme orthopnea. Like I had to sleep sitting up. And I
Mm.
was like, I don't think this is normal. He did an x-ray, he looked at it, and he said, oh, it's pneumonia. And my husband at the time, who is a radiologist, he was a fellow at the time, read it, and he said, Catherine, that looks more like failure to me. He said,
Mm.
but I'll let the more experienced physicians make the call.
Mm-hmm.
And so they called it pneumonia. Yeah,
Wow.
in an obese woman. Well, of course you're tired. You just had a baby. Of course you can't walk across the room because you're 220 plus pounds and you're only 5 feet tall. I mean, that's essentially what I was told. Try to
Yeah.
lose some weight and you'll probably feel a whole lot better.
That is
And yeah.
Detrimental to women. These are the two populations I think that are at the highest risk for misdiagnosis, which is like postpartum
Hmm.
and women who are overweight. And it's because
Yeah.
everything gets blamed on either the pregnancy or the weight, and no one digs
Hmm.
further into additional potential causes.
Yeah. And then you just throw in the racism of medicine, and then
Well,
that just kind
hmm.
of so what happened then is that I knew I had to do something, but I had no motivation. I was looking at my babies and I couldn't figure out why I just couldn't do anything, and realized that I was severely depressed. My motivation was zapped by depression. And
Mhm.
so my postpartum depression, my mild chronic depression, cardiac depression, and I treated my depression first.
Okay.
And once I was properly treated, I then had the motivation to do all the other things I needed. Fortunately, I couldn't do a whole lot anyway. So all the cooking, everything had to be done by my husband. And he was like, no salt for you. No, he was like, he was strict.
He's like,
Um,
not on my watch. You.
I know. But one of the things that would happen is every day I would go to my mother-in-law's house, my in-law's house. They were 2 miles away, and none of us felt comfortable with me being at home with babies by myself. So every day I went to her house. And of course, every day she cooked. She
Mm,
did her best to try and do what was necessary. But of course, I was like, ooh, she made macaroni and cheese today. I'm not giving
yeah.
that up. So, it was hard for me. But one of the things I learned rather quickly, and this was 23 years ago, that if I ate a high protein diet, my blood sugars would stay controlled.
Mm,
And so I started eating protein, focusing on my protein, but eating everything else. And when I did that, my weight slowly started coming down. My diabetes was controlled, which brought my weight down even more, which controlled my diabetes. And it started this nice cycle of, and within 6 months, I had lost 60 pounds and was off insulin.
that is a lot of weight loss.
Yeah. It was very surprising to me. I mean, it was surprising to the point where I thought something might have been wrong. I was like, oh gosh, there's some underlying cancer diagnosis that they missed too. That's what I thought at first.
Yeah.
Because at that point, we hadn't learned it in med school. We hadn't learned it in residency.
No.
We had no idea that you could lose weight based on that level of eating. And I couldn't exercise. So I wasn't
Mhm.
exercising because of my heart. And so it took another 8 years before my heart got to the point where I felt comfortable going back into practice. And
Okay.
so I had a National Health Service Corps obligation. So when I went back to my underserved population, which I planned on doing for the rest of my life,
Hmm.
one of the things I did when I was getting myself healthy is I documented everything I did. I love food. I like to eat. And I basically learned how I could eat whatever I wanted within reason based on how I balanced it with protein.
Oh, I
And
love
so I
that.
created this diet for myself based on what I could eat. Because I couldn't exercise, so it had to be all about food, and it gave me something to focus on,
Yeah.
because I couldn't go back to medicine, and that was hard also.
Hmm.
When I went back, I said I had all this information, and I'm like, I'm going to use it with my diabetic patients. I know how to reverse their diabetes,
Yeah.
and I couldn't. I had no time. I had no support. No one was listening. They were just like, just give them the medicine and let's be done with it. And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I will treat them also, but there's other things we could be doing. So finally, after years of frustration and beating my head against a wall, I decided to open my own micro practice.
Okay.
And that's what I did. And so I opened my micro practice, health, wellness, and weight loss centers, and used my program that I created to help people get healthy and lose weight. Now, I used weight loss as a lure.
Yeah.
I knew that weight is just a symptom of other things. So I knew
Yes.
if I put weight loss on it, people
1000%.
would come through the door, and then I could use my family medicine training to go
Hmm.
after the cause of their weight gain and get them healthy. And that's essentially what I do and have been doing ever since.
I mean, that's the genius of marketing, right? Is that you have to sell people what they want, and
Mm-hmm.
then you couch it in what they want, but then you also give them what they need. And
Exactly.
those combinations, I think, are the key to running a successful business. So look at us. We're
Mm-hmm.
giving you health and business tips. Full package. I have questions.
Mm-hmm.
First, when you say micro practice, can you define for the audience what that means, what that looks like? What is a micro practice?
So micro practice is a practice that has very little overhead. I did not want to go into debt starting a business.
Mm-hmm.
So I found a little small, it had originally been an OBGYN office with 2 exam rooms, one little lab room, one bathroom, one reception desk, one office, and a little bitty reception area. And the rent was low, and the equipment I needed was a little. I could run the whole thing by myself, bring people in, check them in, do their vitals, do it. And so I would see one patient at a time. Obviously, I would schedule them in a way so there was really only one person in the building at a time. Just because it was so small, there was no sense of confidentiality. I could not have two people. They would hear
Wow.
everything. So what I also realized is that it didn't take much to run it, but I didn't want to take out business loans. So I worked at an urgent care center, which is nice shift work. And I just balanced. So I would work shifts to pay for whatever it is I needed. And then over time, as my business grew, I just reduced my shifts to the point
Okay.
where then I didn't have to do that anymore. And so that's what a micro practice is. My office is 1,000 square feet,
That's
very
pretty
small.
nice. But it's a nice
Yeah.
way to like transition. And I know a lot of doctors who are
Mhm.
interested in things like that. So transitioning without creating too much of a pay deficit and still being able
Mhm.
to maintain. And the fact that you're saying this as a mom of three who
Mhm.
obviously has responsibilities and a very full life, to be able to do this, I think is nice to be able to see, oh, someone can do
Yeah.
that. Because there's lots of people who want to do that.
Especially since it's, sorry, I didn't mean to
No, no, go
interrupt you.
ahead.
Especially since my cardiologist would not clear me to go back to full-time medicine. So I
Mm,
had, whatever I did had to be part-time,
okay.
and that was the deal. He literally looked me in my eye and said, I am not going to be the one to explain to your husband why you keeled over because I didn't stop you from doing what you're about to do. So if you
Mm,
promise me that you're going to protect yourself. And so what I did was create a system where I can completely control my schedule, which even got better with the pandemic, actually.
mm-hmm.
Most people at the pandemic who had to close their office went into a tailspin. I went into an emotional tailspin, but not a financial one.
Okay. Tell me more.
So it just so happened that my father passed away on Friday.
Mm,
My daughter's universities closed on Tuesday,
wow.
and my office, we were mandated to close our offices that next Friday. So I
Ooh,
had these 3 huge things happen at the
life-changing
same time.
events. Yep.
Exactly. So my daughters came home, they were reeling, they had just lost their grandfather. And
Mm,
then I lost my office, and it was just like, I really just went into a tailspin. Fortunately, I had already started digitizing my office information so that I could streamline my check-in process, where I could send out digital forms so that people could fill them out before they came into the office to
okay.
save myself time and effort. And so that I didn't have to rely on having an MA or someone else to do things while I was doing other things. And what that did, though, was meant I could jump right from office to telemedicine
Oh,
almost immediately.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's exact. And so when then I realized, oh, telehealth, I can help more people because now suddenly I'm not restricted by location. And so my business jumped. It just doubled
Yeah.
in months. And I was like, oh gosh. So then I had to realize there were some systems that were a little weak. So I had to tighten those up.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing that ever since. But what wonderful thing is that I still work part-time, but my income has tripled.
Ooh, that's what we like to hear. That's math we like to do.
Yeah, it was nice.
So if you're running a micro practice, let's say, and then you're kind of growing and you're doing telemed, are you doing like a group component? How do you do more with less time? This is really the
Okay.
question that I'm asking.
So what I started with was one-on-one. I
Hmm.
did one-on-one coaching, and that was it.
Okay.
Of course, I got to a point where I said, because I had already told myself I was not going to see patients for more than 15 hours a week. So when I filled up that 15 hours, I said, okay, but people were still asking for my help. So I said, okay, I need to figure out a group practice, a group model. But I liked that hands-on
Yeah.
feeling. I just didn't, the group wasn't enough to fulfill my community health and family medicine urges.
Yeah.
So I created a hybrid.
Okay.
And what I did was create tiers within my business where certain tiers got one-on-one each month, but the
Mm,
rest was all group.
I
So
love
group
that.
live, group coaching, group everything. And then if you wanted extra coaching, you could go up to the next tier for one-on-one. And that's still the model I use today.
That's a
And
great model.
yeah.
I love that because then it's case-based, right? You
Mm-hmm.
get to determine who has the most like acute needs, and you can still
Mm-hmm.
support a large number of people. And so it makes sense to me that this is obviously a compassionate model because it's compassionate to you as the individual and it's good for the patients.
And they support one another. Really, it's really important. And this is something that came out of my experience that later has proven to work.
Mm,
And when it comes to transformational programs of any kind, but particularly with weight loss, having a community helps.
mm, mhm,
I don't have to do all the lifting
mm,
because, oh,
no,
yes, I've lost over 100 pounds once everything was said and done, but there are people who are in the middle of that process. And so then there's other people who are at the beginning of their process. So you have someone like me who's lost a significant amount of weight who can tell you what you need to do towards the end and can bring you there. But there are people at every stage who can say, well, this is where I am now. They can commiserate, they can share information. Someone who is feeling like they're not doing very much or not much is happening, here's a question from someone who's at the beginning and they pipe in and it suddenly reminds them, oh, wow, look how far I've come.
right.
But
Yeah.
our brain will tell us all sorts of things and we'll forget. And so having a group really helps in just that mindset and that encouragement and that inspiration, but also those moments when you're down and you just need a pick me up. There
Yeah.
are people who are willing to do that as well. And so it's really important, it's really helpful. And then having weekly live group meetings is also helpful. Some people call it my sorority meeting. And because for some reason the
Good.
men I work with don't show up.
Really?
Just yeah, they don't come to my group stuff, but I still help them. But
I can
they
see that.
prefer. And then I have a private Facebook group as well, where we also, so for people who can't make the lives, I stream it into the Facebook group so that they can still go in, watch it, ask questions, get support from from people, and so it works out very well.
Yeah, well, I can see that men don't show up for good because the way we raise men in this country seeking
Mhm.
support in a public setting is not amongst the things that we teach them. So I'm quite surprised that your
Yeah,
turnout for male participants as well.
it's been slow. But what I will say, this is what I do though. I say anyone in their family can
Mm.
attend.
Oh, that's
So
pretty
often
nice
their
too.
wives will come in,
Because you
even
know
if they're
that's
not in the
really who's
program.
managing. It's always the
Mhm.
partner that's managing the health of the other
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the wives are in my Facebook group, they're in my live groups. They always get the invitations. They know exactly when everything happens. So that way, even if the husbands don't show up, the men don't show up, there's someone getting in that household getting information. And that's also something that I've also made very clear. If someone joins my program, it's for the whole family, not just that individual. So anyone who wants to jump in, and I just kind of caution if it's children,
Right.
and that's a case by case basis.
Yeah. So this is just another level of that compassionate care. I feel like each time you talk, I'm learning and seeing more things that just increase and really like wrap around the entire patient, right? There's a support group in peers, there's a support group in the form of their family members, and then from you. And so they're just having so many people in their lives provide support. And that's how health should be. It's actually shocking that more practices don't operate that way.
There are models out there. Their community health centers are trying to, but again, their resources are limited, their time is limited, and so they can only do so much. Not only that, they're dealing with the population whose time is also limited, whose resources are limited, and who require a lot more but have less. And
Mhm.
so it's very helpful. And one of the things that has been nagging me is that I cannot do this with insurance. I cannot take Medicaid. I cannot take Medicare. I tried doing it with insurance and there was no way I would be able to keep my lights on.
Yeah.
There's a way it can be done. And now that I've been investigating. So what I've done, I've kept my office. The overhead was much too low. And I was like, I am not letting that go. So I've been paying rent since COVID
Wow.
because I could.
Yeah.
And so I held on to it. And what I've decided I'm going to do is open it as a cash-based business with a nonprofit format, not as a nonprofit, but as a nonprofit format so that I can get grants and then I can take insurance. And it can be the place where community health centers funnel their weight care
Oh,
patients.
that's genius.
So that way our community gets the weight care they need without having to come out of pocket.
That is so good. And yeah, that's so good. There's another, do you know Dr. Omalara?
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
Oh yeah, I go to her. Every time she has a webinar, I'm right there taking notes.
as soon as you said that with the grants and finding funding for
Mhm.
nonprofit-based practice, that's who I thought of because that's her
Yes,
area of expertise. Um,
exactly.
yeah, I love that. So, oh my gosh, my brain is going in so many directions because this is just so much good information. And I know that people are going to have questions. My own selfish questions, of course, will be like, I want to go both in the
Mhm.
direction of business and in the direction of weight loss. But on the business end, you were talking about showing other physicians to do the same thing. So, can you just talk me
Mhm.
through your current program and how you're helping other physicians use this kind of model?
Well, I've come up with an acronym. It's called the MEND method. And essentially, it's because I hope it fixes some of the issues we have within medicine.
Yeah.
But one of the ways we learn in medicine is through an apprentice system.
Hmm.
And which means that we learn from the people before us who show us and then we carry it on. However, that means also prejudices and biases get passed on as well. The first step of the program is just to evaluate our own biases, eliminate them, and then also understand that patients also have biases because they've internalized a lot of the shame and blame that has happened over the years for being overweight. And so the very first part of the program really has nothing to do with treatment. It has everything to do with the psychosocial part of weight care.
Hmm.
And so it is, but the psychosocial part of weight care also means that neither the physician nor the patient should be overwhelmed.
Mm.
Because I created my program at a time when I had very little energy and very little reserve. I also created what's called a memo method. Also, I love my acronyms, but basically it's minimal effort with maximum outcome. And so
Mm.
it was just
Yes.
basically honing in on the very necessary things that we needed to do in order to get the results we wanted. And that's both for teaching physicians, but also teaching them how to teach that to their patients
Oh, that's
so
good.
that you go through the process without getting lost. Because there's this thing in diet culture and weight loss culture where if I did it, you can do it. And the
Ugh.
harder it is, more I prove to you that I'm superior to who you are. It's one
Hmm.
of the reasons why we're having these conversations around the medications. And so it is really important to slash that,
Yeah.
get
Oh
rid
my
of it.
God.
Or you don't have to starve yourself. No, you don't have to go through days without eating. No, you don't have to eliminate every single thing in your diet that you love. No, you don't have to exercise like an Olympian to get the results you want. And so it's just focus on this, you'll get the result. That extra that you're doing is only giving you this much benefit. So just eliminate it. It's taking up a whole lot of time and giving you so little benefit. Get rid of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I do that with both my physicians and my patients.
Yeah. I think that's a
And
really important message because I don't know if you watched Oprah's little special that she had the other
mm-hmm,
day. Weight loss is a hot topic always.
yeah, mm-hmm,
And a lot of it is very stigmatized. Like you said, it's one of the layered things, along with racism, along with sexism.
mm-hmm,
There's just so many isms that we're
yep,
combating in medicine. And that stigma of obesity and overweight is a
Mm-hmm.
heavy one. And so the things that we glorify is thinness, even if it's not healthy thinness. And then
Mm-hmm.
we also glorify struggle. So
Yes.
we're like, everyone needs to struggle. You just need to. I was actually, it's so funny. I was literally reading a post. I don't even remember it was Facebook or somewhere and or Instagram where someone was talking about weight loss medications and like, and all the comments were like, people are just too lazy. They just need to exercise and diet. And there was a doctor who I know who was in the comments almost perpetuating the same stigma. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, wow, it is a shame that we as medical professionals are not
Mm-hmm.
taught better. There's so many things that are lacking in our medical education, like the business acumen and then the bias.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many things we have to unlearn when we come out of training.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
when I was in medical school, it was drilled into us. The human condition, no matter what it is, there is a biopsychosocial reason. And if you don't address every single biopsychosocial reason, you are only half treating the patient.
Hmm.
And you treat the patient, not their disease.
Hmm.
You treat the person with the disease,
Right.
not the other way around.
Right.
You treat the person, not their numbers. You treat the person, not their condition. That's what I was taught in med school. That's what I learned, was reinforced in residency. I realized very quickly once I got out of residency that not very many doctors are taught that way.
No.
And people often look at me like I'm just this woo granola doc who's just like pipe dream, whatever. Listen, I'm a living example of it.
Hmm.
And I have hundreds of patients who are living examples of it. So I know it works. And one of the issues we run into is that one, we're told that thinness is currency.
Mm. It
You
is.
have people
Ugh.
who are you have people who are old money. Basically, their genetics make them thin. Have the nouveau riche. There
Mm.
has always been the nouveau riche are the ones with the GLP-1s. There
Mhm.
have always been those who
Mhm.
were always thin, who don't like it that other people get their currency without privilege,
Yeah.
without their genetics, without their ease.
Hmm.
And then you get the internalized born again thin who go after those who haven't lost weight in the same disordered way that they did.
Mm.
And
Wow.
so you get
Explanation.
this combination of things, and it's a constant fight, it's a constant struggle of messaging. And so my feeling is this: weight care is no different than any other disease state. We have to do the biology. We know how fat is made, so we know how to unmake it.
Hmm.
We know this is a hormonal and metabolic issue, so we go after it hormonally and metabolically. But then there's the psychosocial, and we have to address that, the self sabotage, the family sabotage, the friend sabotage, all the different things that play into your job and how it helps or doesn't help, your relationships, how they help and don't help, how they get affected. And I often hear people say, I finally got my husband to agree to let me come see you. And I was like, why? He said, because every time I start a new diet, I make him eat rabbit food.
Rice
And I
cakes
said,
and lettuce.
so I said, okay, well, that's not going to be the case here because one of the first things I do is make sure this is not going to affect your family and it's not going to affect your job. It's not going to affect your friendships. If you want to go out on Friday nights and eat and drink with your friends, you are still going to go out on Friday night and eat and drink with your friends, but we're going to do it in a way so that you still get the results you want.
Hmm.
So about 3 months after I saw her, she came back and when she goes, my husband asked me, well, when are you going to start with this new doctor? And I told him, I started 3 months ago. And he said, I want to meet this person and thank her.
Like, what miracles are happening?
I know, because essentially, what I look at people's lives and I just like, okay, let's figure your life out and let's do it that way. And it just works. And that's something that we just aren't taught enough of. It's not that difficult. once we learn it. It makes perfect sense once we learn it, but we're just not taught it.
Yeah, I think medicine is not known to necessarily be customizable.
Mm-hmm.
Medicine is often like the education system where it's one size fit all. So you teach everybody through one pathway,
Mm-hmm.
regardless as to what's happening in their life and what their individual barriers are. So
Mm-hmm.
again, like I said, every time you explain something about your business, I just see another layer where it's like,
Oh,
oh, yes. That, and I can't imagine, even me as an individual, I'm like, that sounds like an amazing practice. That's what I would want from healthcare, but that's not
mm-hmm.
what we get.
No, I was trained long enough ago where the art of medicine was taught as importantly as the science of medicine.
Hmm.
And insurance companies, unfortunately, have killed some of that
Hmm.
because they have made it difficult for us to think outside the box or even act outside the box
Right.
and even try to do things that make more sense for our patients. And so they nix it. Our
Hmm.
patients get frustrated with us because they think we're not treating them properly. And half of it's because we can't get what they need through their insurance.
Yep.
And one of the reasons that I gave myself the freedom of not taking insurance so that I could use art in my practice. I didn't
Mhm.
have to stick to, and the truth is, the art of medicine is still the science of medicine. It's just applied in a way that's nuanced for the
Right.
person. You
Right.
can't do insurance.
Yeah.
Well, it's different. You can, but it's difficult to do. And there are some people out there who are doing it. I found some people who are, and trust me, I am picking their brain every second I get because I'm like, I want to take that and apply it somewhere where it can help my community.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the collective knowledge I think we as physicians have, if we can support each other in building these types of businesses, in finding the ways around the obstacles in the system, we could
Yes.
definitely overhaul the system.
Yes.
I love every time I speak to a doctor, I realize we're all addressing the same issue. We're all addressing deficits in the healthcare system in some version or another. And so some people are attacking it like patient care level, like someone like me who's teaching other physicians negotiation. I'm attacking it from an employee and staffing level because I want to create sustainable employment for physicians, right? And you want to create sustainable approaches for patients and good outcomes, and also sustainable for you as the provider. So I just think that it's so funny that the issue is less the health of things, if that makes sense, and
Mm-hmm.
more so the systemic constructs that we're all fighting
Mm-hmm.
against. It's a
Yeah.
wild
Or the
world.
health of the system,
The health of the system. Yeah,
which is
that's a good
very
one.
ill at this point.
It is. And I keep wondering, is it going to fall apart? What do you think? Like,
I think it's going to implode to a certain degree. I
hmm.
think that it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Oof.
I think that as long as I think what happens, they've also eroded some of the regulatory protection that was in place for using mid-level providers. For when I first encountered PAs and NPs, they had years and years of experience in medicine as nurses and as or in other tech fields within medicine before doing patient care.
Hmm.
Now, because certain things are unregulated, you do have people who are able to practice independently who have very limited patient contact.
Right.
That could never happen as for physicians because we're still too regulated for that, but it's happening in other places. The problem we're running into is that everybody calls everybody doctor. So
Ugh.
when you read these stories, the doctor missed this, the doctor missed uh, identified this, misdiagnosed. You have no idea if it was actually a physician
Hmm. It's true.
because we're all being lumped in as doctors.
As
And I know for a
providers.
fact that I can read articles and tell that was not a physician. That was not someone who went to medical school.
Right. Sometimes I'm
But
reading
that's
things.
this is basic physiology 101. There's no
Yeah.
way a doctor missed that.
Yeah.
A real doctor.
Right. Yeah, it's true. And then we also have other peoples who are called doctors in there, like chiropractors, naturopaths, all of this. And there is also less regulation in those fields as well. And oh, it's a nightmare. I'm literally doing
But
some
if you
crazy.
find good ones, they're
Yeah.
wonderful.
Right.
But their wonderfulness is being diluted by all the quacks out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's the problem. And the thing is with weight care, it's such a lucrative business. It is a
Mm,
multi-billion-dollar business. Because
yeah,
it is a multi-billion-dollar business, it does not behoove anyone who's in business for medicine to help people lose weight permanently.
right.
So what we see are businesses saying, what I'm doing is helping you lose weight, but when you gain it back, it's your fault.
Mm-hmm.
When the truth is,
Especially
if someone gains it back, that means whatever it was you did for them was not sufficient.
temporary. Yeah, and temporary. It's
Yeah.
funny. There's a bunch of these companies that are doing the compounded meds,
Mm-hmm.
right? So a couple of them that I've seen and see how they structure is you have a virtual visit with a provider, because it could be
Mm-hmm.
anybody, PA, NP, whoever,
Mm-hmm.
MD, and most of them don't require any lab work. I'm like, how are you prescribing drugs and you don't know anything about the patient other than what they tell you verbally? You haven't checked.
Mm-hmm.
They may not even know things about themselves because no one has examined them. No one has
Mm-hmm.
done any lab work.
Well,
And
that's
they-
not unusual.
yeah.
I'm telling you that was born out of the pandemic when we could
Mm,
not examine patients and labs were not equipped. You could send electronic orders. Now it's a lot easier, but it
mm,
was very difficult for labs to keep up with electronic orders. So a model was born out
yeah.
of that.
Oof.
And essentially, actuaries, who are the people who determine the risk benefit ratio and how much money it's going to cost, realized that the level of risk was such that it made more sense to continue on in that realm in that way rather than worry about risk. Now, of course, doctors are risk averse because we get sued.
Yes.
Nobody else cares.
Yeah. No, it's true.
And so again, it's like, how much can I get away with before it gets to the point where this is an extreme liability?
Hmm.
And there are cases like myself, in fact, where patients were being given this lifeline
Yeah.
and it was truly a lifeline. And then all of a sudden it was snatched away.
Mm,
And so those of us who could were trying to figure out a way to get that lifeline back to patients. Compound pharmacies were one of those lifelines. Now there are some good ones and there's some really bad
right.
ones.
Yeah. I don't have an issue actually with the compounding of the medication, especially as there's shortage and it's like almost impossible
Mm-hmm.
to prescribe. I
Yeah.
think my issue is, I guess, the patient care that
The
surrounds
model is not centered focused. The
it. Yeah,
model is very much business focused.
right.
Absolutely.
So I'm like, whatever, however, if you're compounding properly and things are like, I have no issues with that. I have no loyalty to any of these, like
Mm-hmm.
Novartis or whatever. Like, I don't care about the companies, right? Because they're also making money,
Yeah.
like Eli Lilly and whatever.
Oh
But
gosh.
right. Like, I don't care about the actual company. I guess my thing is it's lacking all the things you've already described in your practice, which is
Mm-hmm.
addressing all those social things,
Mm-hmm.
addressing the mindsets,
Mm-hmm.
and implementing long-term behavior change, because that is something that's gradual over time
Yep.
and cannot be done. Like, it's like, I'm like, yeah,
But it's
take.
also not necessary when you have
Mhm.
medications and the underlying metabolic
Right.
causes being treated. Now,
Yeah.
in the perfect world, yes, you want to treat and have changes, lifestyle changes. But we don't make hypertensives go through lifestyle changes if they still need their hypertension treated.
Right.
We still.
Yeah.
And the truth is, the only time we have this conversation pushing lifestyle is when it's obesity, honestly.
Mhm.
We should, and rather than removing it from obesity, we should be pushing it with every other disease state.
Yes.
Just
1,000.
don't.
Yeah.
We just,
1,000%.
because we don't put it on the patient. We put it on the medication. We just don't even, it's only time we really harp on the patient is when it is obesity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a problem as long as we do it equally across the board.
Yeah.
And one of the issues that we're running into is that one, people are making a whole lot of money, so they have a lot of money to lobby.
So much money.
And so they lobby, and therefore decisions are being made by non physicians about medical care and how it's delivered.
Mhm.
The other that's happening is that it's convenient for patients. And as long as they get what they want in the way that they want it, they
Absolutely.
don't care how dangerous it is.
No, people don't. And
I mean,
that's
there are
the
companies out there where people are reconstituting their own medication.
I saw that. I read that. I was reading where people were like, oh, on TikTok or something, someone was talking about how they're reconstituting and trying to show others how to reconstitute. And it's a random person in their house. Like, this is completely out of control.
That's why I joined TikTok really was because to try and counter some of that dangerous stuff that was going
Yeah.
on. Um,
How, okay, so that is a question I will ask you because that is a thing that I do not ever want to do. I find it exhausting to try to counter all of the myths. So how do you feel?
well,
How do
what
you
I do
fit
is
in? Yeah.
so what I do is okay. So I always do talks. I one of the things I did to prove to myself that I had discipline and willpower was not by not eating, but by doing weekly lives and classes.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
I was like, I don't have to not eat chocolate cake to prove to you that I have discipline. I can do that by just coming on live every Tuesday. And
Yeah.
so that's what I do. And so I take those videos and repurpose them and put them up on YouTube. I mean, on TikTok.
Nice.
And so I'm educating anyway. So I
Right.
just put them up and people see them and then they watch them and then they ask me questions and then, then they ask for appointments and then some of them end up in my group. And so I work with them there. And then other people, I just help direct them when I can't. They're like, I really can't afford that. Fine, here, this is what you do. This is where you go. There are
Mhm.
community health centers. They work on a sliding scale. They're everywhere, which I don't understand why people don't know this, but they're everywhere. Those doctors know how to treat weight. They also know how to treat diabetes, which is essentially the exact same thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Treating weight
Mhm.
and treating diabetes are absolutely no different. And so the only problem is I get these reports back. Well, my doctor doesn't believe in
Mhm.
treating XYZ. Well,
Ugh.
then they're not a doctor. Go to somebody else.
Yeah.
How do you
Get
not
that
believe
person.
in treating a disease state? That is like so obviously biased, so obviously prejudiced. That's like saying I don't believe in treating women.
Yeah.
How do you get away with that? And so that's what I do on TikTok. That's essentially what I do. I just kind of repurpose videos from other things I do and put them up there to educate people. And what happened last July, around the 4th of July, every single account around weight loss that was talking about GLP-1s got reported and removed from TikTok.
What?
Every doctor, every person, just like thousands of accounts were just gone.
Wow. Why?
Somehow I missed it. It did not. And I think that the reason is because I, I don't use hashtags very well.
Mm.
I think they were just like putting in hashtags and every account that came up, they reported. And I don't use a lot of hashtags, so mine didn't come up. The other is that I don't call anybody out.
Mm.
I just educate. Now I have called out physicians a couple of times, but I am one, so I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, people don't care if doctors talk about other doctors. You just can't talk about patients. You can't talk.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's crazy. And well, that's one of my concerns I think about social media is that a platform is
Mm-hmm.
not your own. And so at any given time, someone can just pull the plug on work that you've created or a voice that
Mm-hmm.
you've cultivated. So, yeah,
Yes.
okay. So we've talked I mean, I think they kind of are intertwined, right? Because if you practice medicine in a sustainable way that works for your patients, then it's also sustainable for you. And same thing, if you're doing things that work for you, they also tend to work very favorably for your patients. So, okay, so anyone listening, if they want to look you up, if they want to learn from you, where do they find you?
The best way to find me is my website, drtoomer.com. And pretty much I'm the only Catherine Harmon Toomer on the internet,
Okay,
Dr. Catherine.
nice.
There's a couple other Catherine Toomers, but I'm the only physician Catherine Harmon Toomer. So if you look, you'll find me. And also Dr. Toomer. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Facebook as Dr. Toomer, YouTube as Dr. Toomer. TikTok is Dr. Toomer Talks, only because there was another Dr. Toomer. I mean, you just put it and you'll find. But
Awesome.
drtoomer.com is the best way.
Okay. And so people can reach out to you. They can either sign up for the weight loss aspect of your program, or are you limited in where you're practicing? Like, who do you offer it to? What's your coverage range?
Well, what I do, first of all, I do a consultation. I do a strategy consultation because I may not be the person to help. And so I want to know that before I get started. There's nothing more frustrating than somebody taking your money for something that they don't help you with.
Amen.
So I always want to make sure that I can help first of all.
Hmm.
And if I can't, I have resources to direct people to others who can.
Hmm.
And so really that's what I do. Just contact me. You get a link to my schedule. We talk and we go from there. And I listen, determine what it is you might need, and determine if I can help with that need.
Okay. I love the
And
sufficient.
so I help anyone who's interested. So for physicians, anyone who wants to earn and serve with confidence can work with me. I mean, what I've done is I've taken my hybrid one-on-one group model from patient care, and now I'm applying it to physicians. So it's the same private Facebook group, private live coaching group, one-on-ones each month with individuals. And once my course is completely finished, then there are those who can just get it independently of me if they want, and go through it and then just, ask for help later in a different way. So I'm doing it that way so that young physicians who are transitioning, particularly those who are burning out or those who just want to add a vertical to their business.
Hmm.
Weight care is a wonderful vertical
Yeah.
because patients want it, and they're paying other people for it, and they're paying other people for stuff that is dangerous.
And
And if you
bad.
truly care about your patients, you want them to do something that's safe. And the only way you can ensure that is if it's you doing it.
Yeah. No, that's
And
true.
so and then with patients, it's really anyone who just wants a soft place to land.
Mm.
I just became the doctor I needed when I was desperate.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so
I love it. Such
that's
an
what I
important
provide.
message. I think, a lot of, especially younger doctors, people who are entering the field are entering a lot of these environments that are corporatized and they're trying to fit into the status quo. And so it's just refreshing to hear that you can practice the way you want. You can practice in a way that's sustainable and
Mhm.
impactful. And you
Yes.
don't have to just do it the way someone else has told you to do it or the way they've shown you it's done.
And right now, I'm 58 years, I'll be 59 this year. So I'm coming to the end of my
Right.
career anyway. I probably won't because I love it too
I was
much.
gonna say, wait, no, don't do
Yeah,
that.
no, but I'm an older doctor who can work from anywhere and who can control my own schedule. I needed that. And I still have cardiomyopathy. So I needed that. I need it. And I can support myself and my daughters. I don't need to, fortunately, because we're a two-physician family, but it if I had to, I could. So that, and it wasn't really what I set out to do, really.
Yeah.
It
Is
just
it
kind of
funny?
grew into this thing. And I was just like, Catherine, you've got something here. Do something with it.
You do.
And so
Oh,
I'm always looking for ways I just feel like I am so blessed to be here that there was a reason, and I need to do something with that reason and not take it for granted. And so that's really what I do. And so as people come to me with requests or things or needs, all it does is give me an idea to say, ooh, I can add that. If I'm
hmm.
not doing it already, I can do it now because I'm
Hmm.
me and I am the only one who have to ask. So I work for myself. So
Yeah.
all I have to do is add it.
And this is exactly what it means to practice with purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It is to be intentional about how we use our background and our
Mm-hmm.
experience. And that is one of the leading things I think a lot of physicians are looking for because we don't
Yes.
feel that way in a lot of these settings. And so, oh, so good. It's giving me
And
chills.
what you're doing is amazing. Like I said, I was actually and I don't intimidate very easily. I can tell you that. I just don't. Very confident. But I can tell you, I have been watching your podcast thinking, gosh, I really want to do that podcast, but I wouldn't ask. So when you asked, I was
You know what's funny?
like,
I actually wish more people, like a lot of people who have been on the podcast have
mm-hmm.
asked, actually.
Yeah.
And I think I ran into you at NMA, right? And I was like, you have
Mm-hmm.
to do this, please. And it's funny because I also watch other physicians and I think, oh, they're doing
Mm-hmm.
so well. They don't have time for my little podcast. They don't want to do my
Yes.
little podcast. So it's so funny. That's bi-directional, right? We do a lot of
Uh-huh.
marketing and we think,
Yeah, I
oh, the
forget
better
that
person.
too. Yeah. So, but I mean, it's really wonderful. Like I watch and just see hearing other physicians, and it's very inspiring. It's very much a way of just not giving up and just realizing there are other. And even because my career was stalled for quite a while, so I'm sort of, years a little few years behind where most people are at my age or
Mhm.
in my level of career, and I don't mind because I'm here. It helps with that because
Yeah.
there's a lot of it's mind drama, and we
Oh,
know
it's all
this.
mind drama. It's a
And
jungle up
so,
there.
it's easy to get rid of that.
Yeah. No, I think, I mean, the work you're doing, just talking about it, of course, like I have so many questions because I'm do locums pediatrician. So I've seen a
Okay.
lot of practices. I've seen a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
dysfunction. And I think for me,
Yes.
what came out of that was how do I protect myself and how do I show others how to protect themselves from some
Mm-hmm.
of these like more advantageous workplaces where they really will take advantage of you. And so I think one of the
Yeah.
options that I probably have not explored is doing my own thing. And so I just love
Yeah.
hearing it because it's giving all of
Mm-hmm.
the same solutions that people
Mm-hmm.
are looking for when I coach them on negotiation is the ability to
Yeah.
do something, to do it well, to,
Yeah.
really have a purpose that and not have to deal with the nonsense of the insurance and writing prior authorizations 1,000 times and
Yeah.
all the
Which
things
I
that
still
come
have
up.
to do, unfortunately, but at least I have the time to do it though now.
Right, right.
But I know you're trying to wrap things up. But one thing I do want to say, this is something also I did. I got coaching.
Yes,
I knew things
coaching.
I didn't, so I always said that, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
I knew, and I would never know unless I asked somebody who was in the know.
Hmm.
And so that's one of the things I did do. I am actually still with the same business coach I had prior to COVID,
Nice.
and have grown as a result. I also got counseling.
Hmm.
I got a therapist, a virtual therapist who I've been with
Hmm.
now for 4 years. And
Yeah.
then every time I need something and there's information that I want, I always ask for help
Yes. Yes.
because we
Well,
just don't know. And there's too many people out there claiming to know who don't know. And I've often said there are a lot of people out there who've been passengers on a plane trying to tell people they know how to teach you how to fly one. And I'm just like, no. Even the pilots, I'm like, I'm not even going to ask a pilot. I'm going to ask the person who trained the pilot.
yes, it's so true. I 1,000% support getting all the help you need, right? I have a
Yeah.
therapist, I have a coach, I
Yep.
have community, and all of those things have made
Mm-hmm.
such a drastic difference for me and
Yep.
being able to even get to where I am. And it's funny you say like, "Oh, you're behind for people at your level." It's so funny because I'm like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you look like you're in a great place." And I also feel like I'm behind for people at my level.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so fun.
Mm-hmm.
There's always like a mind trick that tells us that we're behind.
Mm-hmm.
So many of
Yeah.
us feel that. And we
Yeah.
are where we're supposed to be. And that's just,
Well, it's our training. We're kind of told that from day one. You're at the low end of the totem pole. And you never get rid of that feeling of being at the low end of the totem pole because that's where you start. And I
mhm.
think that's one of the reasons why attendings can be so mean to med students is because they too often remember that feeling and they take it out on people as a
Yeah.
result.
Yeah. And they feel like they had to scratch their way up. And so no
Yeah.
one else is entitled to have the
Mm-hmm.
glory and the prestige that they have because you have to
Mm-hmm.
earn it by tooth and nail.
Yes. Just like fitness.
Yeah, it's like the toxicity of that culture. I just
Yes, it is.
gotta love it. Oh, medicine's a
Yeah.
very special place to work.
Yeah. Well, I know you and I could go on forever, so, but I know
I
you.
know. Well, I always say like there's more to discuss. I have people on the podcast more than once, and I have a feeling that you will be a good repeat guest because there's always stuff developing.
Anytime.
There is so much to share. And I want to hear, I guess, what the audience has questions about too, because
Okay.
as people come, they always reach out and they're like, oh, you had this doctor on that talked about X, Y, and Z. And so I think, I accept suggestions and
Mhm.
questions. And of course, you can reach out to Dr. Toomer yourself, but
Mhm.
we can always do another episode.
I would be more than
I'm
happy to.
always excited about that. But
More
thank
than
you
happy
so
to.
much.
Thank you.
Like I say, you're definitely one of the people that when I see you work and I see the messages that you put out, I definitely appreciate your approach. I appreciate your authenticity. I appreciate how much you're committed even to the physician community. I see the way you show up in all of our Facebook groups and you always give sound feedback, non-judgmental advice. And
Thank you.
so I just appreciate your presence in those spaces because, it's the social media of things. Things
Yeah.
can go in any direction. So yeah, I
Yep.
everything that you're doing. So I thank you for your time and for sharing your
Thank
voice with
you.
us. It has been
Thank
such a
you.
pleasure.
It really has been. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put, as you guys know, I put all the information to find Dr. Toomer in the show notes, and we're now on YouTube. So if you're listening to this audio form, you can also watch it in video form, and the links will be on YouTube as well. So until next time, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you later. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast. And what I want you to do next is link us everywhere you can. Instagram at The Black Doctor. Just become part of our collective. I want you here. Thanks. Until next time. Bye.